Coming up on the San Francisco 49ers report, some Niners injury news to get to in the lead up to Sunday's game against the Arizona Cardinals. And some of this injury news is a little bit concerning because Arizona is a feisty team. San Francisco going to be on the road. And Kyle Shanahan talked about how Arizona does remind him of the Niners team back in 2017, which started slow in the start of a rebuild and then finish the season really hot. Stay tuned for that, but first, make sure you subscribe to the channel for Niners news, updates, and analysis just like this. I do my best to give you Niners shows every single day year-round, but I've been pretty sick over the last couple of days, absolutely bedridden. So apologies for no show yesterday on Wednesday, and here I am on Thursday night with the Niners update. So make sure you hit that subscribe button to stay in the know. So here is the Niners injury report from Thursday's practice at the SAP Performance Center in Santa Clara. These following players did not participate in Thursday's session. Defensive tackle Arik Armstead with a foot and knee injury, Spencer Burford with a knee injury, Aaron Banks with a hip injury, Oren Burks, knee injury, Ross Dwelley with an ankle, Dre Greenlaw, hip and ankle, Javon Hargrave, hamstring, Ambry Thomas was out due to personal reasons, Charvarius Ward, groin injury. We saw him go out very early in that game last week, and then Trent Williams had his typical veteran rest day. A few takeaways player for player here, because going into this game, San Francisco is a little bit banged up here. Arik Armstead, this was expected. Kyle Shanahan said going into last week's Seahawks game that Armstead was going to miss 1 to 2 weeks, but it wasn't an ACL or an MCL in that knee. It was going to be more of a short-term injury. So him missing this game isn't really much of a surprise at all if he does end up missing it. In fact, I think it's probably smart to err on the side of health here, err on the side of caution, and to allow a Javon Kinlaw and a Kevin Givens and a Kalia Davis to get those reps. They can get the experience, and they've played well over the last couple of weeks when Armstead has been banged up, but you want Armstead for the haul. And you want him for the stretch run as well as in the playoffs because he's been so good for this team. And last week, Kinlaw and Givens were excellent. Givens is one of the highest graded Pro Football Focus players with an overall grade on that Niners defense last week. And then Kinlaw has really put together a really solid last couple of weeks. But this season, really, now that he's finally been able to stay healthy, because when he was drafted in 2020, first-round pick out of South Carolina, expectations so high, literally banged up every single year from that point on. This year, he has been healthy, and he's been an impactful player as a rotational defensive tackle. So expect to see more Kinlaw, Givens, and Kalia Davis if Arik Armstead cannot play. Where we start to get a little bit concerned here is along this 49ers offensive line. Spencer Burford and Aaron Banks. It's not great that the Niners here are potentially without their 2 starting guards in this game against Arizona. Now, Jon Feliciano has already started at left guard when Aaron Banks has been out, as well as right guard when Spencer Burford has been out. So he can obviously take the place of one of the 2, and ideally Banks is able to play, Burford can't, and Feliciano can step in there. In fact, maybe Feliciano's been a better player this year. That's up for debate as compared to Burford. So you might be at your best as an offensive line unit with Aaron Banks at left guard and with Jon Feliciano at right guard. But if both Banks and Burford can't play, then you're starting to tap into depth that you really don't have. And going into this year, Niners offensive line was already a concern, right? And it's a unit that also doesn't have a lot of depth, especially on the interior. And Nick Zakelj is out for the year because of a biceps injury, so that takes away from some of your depth on the interior. Could see a little bit of Ilm Manning, the UDFA out of Hawaii, who was with San Francisco, didn't make the 53-man roster. Niners brought him back on the practice squad, was actually signed to the active roster by Arizona, then let go and brought back by San Francisco. So look out for him to maybe fill that void just because San Francisco is pretty thin along the interior offensive line. Banks is obviously a really good player, pass pro as well as run protection. So if you're without him, that of course does impact your offense. And this offensive line, they haven't provided Brock Purdy with a lot of clean pockets. Purdy's ability to get rid of the ball quickly has allowed the sack numbers to stay low and dip down. So at the very least, San Francisco's offensive line isn't giving up a lot of sacks. That's somewhat of a credit to them, but it's more so of a credit to Brock Purdy. As for Oren Burks here, he's going to be out for a couple of weeks because of that knee injury. He's emerged, especially this year, as a really good backup depth linebacker. And on the defensive side of the ball, like, it's been him who's played a lot of backup linebacker alongside Fred Warner as well as Dre Greenlaw. And we already know that he's one of the special teams aces on this football team. And with the Niners already being without George Odum, who is their special teams ace and a backup safety, now without Oren Burks, your special teams unit is getting hit and nicked up a little bit with some injury issues there. So special teams, something that can go awry from week to week, something to keep an eye out for against the Cardinals on Sunday. Ross Dwelley, we knew this was a month timeline going in. The good news with Dre Greenlaw, the enforcer for this Niners defense, the guy who sets the standard, who sets the tone, so much physicality. You just love the way that he plays with the physicality and the brute force, injecting fear into the opponent. Despite him being hurt, he is expected to play, dealing with some hip and ankle injuries there, but the positive spin for Dre Greenlaw is expected to play against Arizona here in Week 15. Javon Hargrave, at defensive tackle, you're already without Arik Armstead, and this Cardinals offense isn't horrible. So I know earlier I was talking about how Kinlaw and Givens and Kalia Davis can step in. Now you're more so having to rely on those players if Hargrave is unable to play. And we know that Kyler Murray is a really dangerous threat. He can impact the game and hurt you with his arm as well as with his legs. Where you miss Hargrave is his ability to rush after the quarterback. And he's able to demand double teams on the interior. He can collapse the pocket from the inside, force Kyler Murray to get outside, where he's going to have to deal with a Nick Bosa or a Chase Young. So if he's hurt, that hurts the 49ers defense as well. Ambry Thomas personal should be good to go. Charvarius Ward did a really good podcast with Arik Armstead, Title League. Shout out to Title League, sending me some of those clips over time. He's talked about himself being a top 5 corner in this league. He really has been. He's got 20 pass breakups this year. And he's emerged as one of the top cornerbacks in the National Football League. His ball instincts have been really, really special. And what a signing by the San Francisco front office to look at a player like that and to see a player emerging. Because when he hit the free agency market going into the 2022 offseason, a lot of people thought that he was a very solid corner. Niners paid him about $14 million per year, and they projected him to end up being their number 1 corner. And he's been just that. And to pay $14 million for a top 5 corner when you see corners making $20 million a year, that has been an excellent value deal for San Francisco. And Ward's ability to just lock down number 1 wide receivers, we've seen it against DK Metcalf, we've seen it against A.J. Brown, his ability to turn around, address the ball, have those ball skills, have those instincts, really special ability as a corner. Hopefully he's going to be able to go. Diamador Lenore did step up. He's been playing slot ever since the Niners came out of the bye and had to bench Isaiah Oliver. Him on the outside with Ward, they've ended up being one of the Ambry Thomas, and Ward on the outside with Lenore in the slot. They've ended up being and turned into one of the best secondaries over the last 5 weeks during this 5-game winning streak. And if Ward can't go, you'll see Thomas and Lenore on the outside. As for what the Niners do in that slot, hopefully it's not Isaiah Oliver. And then lastly, Trent Williams rest. This is just a veteran maintenance day for him. Now, why is all of this concerning? The Arizona Cardinals are a feisty football team. And Kyle Shanahan said something interesting this week that Arizona reminds him of the 2017 Niners team. That was Shanahan's first year when he had to rip everything down, put his fingerprints on the organization, and build this organization back up. San Francisco in 2017, a lot of people remember it very, very well. You're coming off the Chip Kelly, Jim Tom Sula stages. San Francisco started the year 0-9, but then they turned it around. They rallied, and they gave a lot of fans hope going into the next year. Now, unfortunately, Jimmy Garoppolo hurt his ACL very early in 2018. But San Francisco went 6-1 down the stretch to finish the year 6-10. Now Arizona is 3-10, but they've lost 4 games by 1 score or less. So that 3-10 record, they could easily have 7 wins this year with 4 games left to go. This is not a team that you can overlook. They have wins over the Dallas Cowboys, who are playing awesome football right now, the Atlanta Falcons, who are in the race to win the NFC South, as well as the Pittsburgh Steelers, who their offense is pretty bad, their defense is pretty good, and they're in the playoff hunt as well in the AFC. And you look at that Arizona team, Kyler Murray has been back for the last multiple weeks. He provides a lot of mismatches with his ability to make plays with his arm as well as his legs. And San Francisco is banged up at some really important positions. For where Arizona ranks statistically on the offensive and defensive sides of the football, points per game, 17.7, that's 26th. Yards per game, 296, that's 26th. They're also 26 in points per play, 26 in yards per play, so that's pretty consistent there. Third down conversion percentage, 18. Fourth down conversion percentage, 32nd. Red zone, 4th. So they're actually pretty good at converting in the red zone, 63%, but they're only scoring 1.9 touchdowns per game. That's 24th. And then defensively, this is a unit, not a lot of talent. Jonathan Gannon is a defensive mind, but with them not having a lot of talent, like they play hard, they fly to the football, they play with a lot of energy, man. 25.5 points per game, that's 30th. Yards per game, 23rd, 355. Points per play, 29th. Yards per play, 25th. Opposing third down conversion percentage, 31st. But fourth down conversion percentage, 6th. And then opposing red zone touchdown percentage, 20th. Not like awful. And then touchdowns per game, 29th. So San Francisco's going to have an opportunity to move the football, to put points on the board. But this is a game where if you go to Arizona, where there's going to be a Niners-heavy crowd, and there's going to be scarlet red all over the place in Glendale, Arizona. You go in there and you turn the football over and you try to sleepwalk through this game and you think it's going to be a cakewalk, Arizona's going to punch you right in the chin. This has been a team that's been feisty for San Francisco for a long time now. So talent-wise, the Niners had the clear edge, and the gap is obviously pretty vast. They should win. They have plenty to play for. Number 1 seed, home field advantage within grasp. If the Niners win out and the Eagles win out, and they have the same record, San Francisco gets that number 1 seed because they have home field advantage. They have the tiebreaker. And if the Dallas Cowboys win out and the Niners win out and they finish with the same record, the Niners own that tiebreaker because they beat Dallas and Philadelphia head-to-head. So that's really big as we enter this final month of the season. Crazy to think that we're already sitting here December 14th. Christmas is around the corner. New Year's going to be kicking in. And the regular season is down to 4 games. Arizona, to really summarize this, a young team, an experienced team, but one thing they do, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, they show a lot of effort, and that's been part of the cultural change under Jonathan Gannon. They didn't always show a lot of that effort under Cliff Kingsbury once things started to go awry, once things started to go downhill for that Arizona team. We'll be back on Sunday for another watch party. Just wanted to update you on some injury news for San Francisco. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Apologies for me being sick. No video on Wednesday, but coming back with the video on Thursday. Hopefully I'm going to start to feel better, and we'll be all right. San Francisco. Make sure you subscribe, and we'll catch you next time here on the show. Peace.